Hello, peoples of the internet. We're finally on week 21 of Stairway Mountain Time Trial, where today we are time trialing the Terrible. This is a car which, contrary to what the name tells you, it's not terrible. It's just got an incredible amount of torque, actually 320 Newton meters, so it'll spin the wheels. As you might have expected, it's an inline 6 engine. It is basically a very cheap demolition derby car, so we're not really going to spend all the money on the desirable V8 models of the Moonhawk. It weighs 1480 kilograms. It's heavy, even if it is a lot lighter than a regular Moonhawk and doesn't have the roll cage. And there you'll see there's not a lot of grip in the tyres. They're really just basic tyres. They're not designed for motorsports, but they've been used for motorsports anyway, because that's what you do when you're on a budget. The horsepower is 153. Yep, less than certain models of Covet, but still, it does manage to get a decent move on around the corners, and if you get things right, it can be a relatively competitive vehicle. I say relatively competitive, the time it's set was an 8:22.56, which puts it just below the Grand Marshal V8 limousine and just above the base model 90s Pessima. Decent vehicles again, vehicles that tried but didn't quite achieve as good a times as they perhaps should have achieved in the ideal world. It also beat a Crown Victoria, another muscle car that's not really the quickest but still kind of capable in its own way. The Sunburst Base and the Hirochi Star also came just above it. So it's come near to a few European, or Japanese rather, vehicles, which is not a bad feat at all. You'll see at higher speeds it's decently stable, if only because it's a larger car. And it does somewhat fine grip. I mean, there's been worse. There's been cars that lose control when you take them too fast and fly into barriers. This, at least on the very high end, is a stable vehicle, and it is, in that respect, a good thing. Now, we're approaching the end here. Just have a good scrape on the wall for good measure. And as you may notice, it's not got all the parts of a Moonhawk. It's lost the headlights and tail lights and interior bits, as you're going to see now when I show you around the car. They've taken off those bits. That's where the weight saving is, a lot of it. So it's not going to be a very nice car to live with, but decently quick actually, as far as very cheap race cars go. Now here we have the D35 Pig. It's what I like to call a cloud of a car. It's very soft, and you feel like you're going to fall through it all the time. Very unsupportive too, just like a wheel cloud. Regardless of what you say about Rolls Royces, they are far more solid than clouds. They don't deserve the name, in my mind. This, however, does. It's 491 horsepower and 757 torques of big, sloppy 2.4 ton rock crawler. And there's very little weight at the rear, which makes it particularly annoying under brakes. I mean, it wants to tip over at every corner, it's that soft, but then you try and brake and it will slide because there's no weight to hold the rear end in place, there's no downforce to hold the rear end in place. All you've really got is a bit of wood and a wheel on the back, so it's not a very reassuring vehicle to drive. I really had to push this to get the best time I could, but I was determined to get an under 8-minute time, and I did. It's a 7:56.657. Kind of a miracle I got that, but still, came just below a portable YBR. In itself a pretty nice vehicle to drive, but not a very powerful one at that. And it came just above the D-Series drag, a D-Series with very different problems. I mean, here you'll see this vehicle can fly over bumps if they're not even there, but then it gets very sloppy. I mean, I could easily take too much turning angle into a corner and roll this thing, and that would not be good for time. I mean, as you'll see up here, I'm going to have a small kind of off because I just can't keep it under control as much as I would like. You see, I try and brake there and it just slides, and then the only thing I can really think to do is just floor it and hope it recovers itself, which it kind of does. And because the time was still good, I just decided to keep it like that. I could have kept trying and trying, but it's such a stressful vehicle to drive well, so I didn't want to drive it again. I was happy with what I'd done, and I decided to keep it that way. You'll see over the finish, we actually have no mirrors. I didn't lose those on the run, it just came like that, which is very strange. And I might as well mention we beat both the Super Sport vans. I don't know what I've done here. It was a miracle to get that time, and not really any damage either. I'd have expected far worse given how hard this thing was to drive, but we're moving on now, so let's do it. Here we have the Miramar Rally number 4. This is a nice kind of agile Japanese car, and as you might expect, it's much better around corners than a D35. Now this hasn't got the independent suspension of the race version we did a while ago. This has got leaf springs on the rear, and you can feel it. I didn't even have to check the part selection to know this had leaf springs, because it's got that very firm feeling. As you'll see, I got it sliding back there, and you can just tell around corners the way the rear end feels rigid. It's not the same as an independently sprung suspension system, but it does still work. It's still got a capable chassis, and unlike the race version, it doesn't slide all over the place. The reason I believe this is despite having far less grippy rear tyres and far inferior rear suspension, it's got 86 horsepower, which is a fair amount less than the race version, so it can keep itself under control. Now torque at 169 Newton meters is not exactly perfect. I'd rather have less torque than that, but just push the car that bit harder out of corners. It would make it easier to handle, but then that's the way the engine is, you know. I can't suddenly make the engine work for me if it doesn't work for me. I just have to work with what I've got. Now the car itself is just a GTZ with rally parts, hence why it's not got a full motorsport kind of suspension system. It's just a rally prepared Miramar. It lacks the rear seats, it gains a roll cage and some fancy lights on the front and a black bonnet, and really that's the difference. Maybe it's got taller suspension as well, but I don't imagine this and the standard GTZ being that different for time. They're just very, very similar vehicles. Now, you'll see it's a much lighter car around corners. You can throw it in, and that's why it's set at 753.56. The D Series Pig proved that you couldn't just throw power at a car and expect it to handle it perfectly. It doesn't work that way. I've messed up my car with the end jump as well. It was immaculate before that. But this car sits between the Barstow Trans Am and the CRX Race. So fairly decent handling vehicles, and it does it with a lot less power as well, also just below the Pigeon STIG Dirt. Now here we have the Covet Rally. It's quite a nice vehicle to drive. Mind, it is front wheel drive with a decent sized turbo on it, so it does understeer around corners. You can't escape it really. The Pessima all-wheel steer kind of got around that problem, but a front wheel drive car is always going to understeer. I actually think chipping my front end on that wall bent my steering up, crazy as it sounds. And yeah, that's another problem with a Covet. It seems easier to bend up wheels and things than it is with larger cars. Like bumps which you should be able to make it over, they'll just bend up the wheel. I mean, the vehicle will often keep going, but when it is in such a state, why would you want to drive it like that? You'll also see you can just floor it and hope it recovers. That's the other joy of front wheel drive. If this was that Miramar, I wouldn't have been able to just floor it and hope the car rights itself. It would slide, and lose its rear end. This doesn't, but it will understeer. It is also a lot more powerful. It's 112 horsepower more powerful than the Miramar at 178 horsepower, and it has a little more torque at 211 Newton meters. So overall, decent specifications, and we keep on proving that power isn't everything. We'll see that D series, it was quick, but because I so struggled to keep control of it, it was nowhere near the time of a Covet, which is actually 7:24.95. I mean, this is a quick car, even if it doesn't necessarily feel it round corners. This is capable of incredible speed just because of how easy to drive it is, and I say that as I get a slide. It will slide under brakes if you get at the wrong angle. I mean, they're not grippy tyres, it will scramble for grip as well, but because it's front wheel drive, it likes to slide a lot less than other vehicles. Now, the time puts it between a Lancia Delta Rally and an 80s Pessima Custom. Now, they are very, very quick cars, all-wheel drive supercars essentially from the 80s, I guess you could say, and to be competing with them in a modified front-wheel drive hatchback really just proves how over-engineered, I guess you could say, these things are. It beat the Cadillac Series 62 as well, which I believe is our quickest standard muscle car, only it's a race car. Another thing we can say about this is it only just came below the Covet Gymkhana as well, so it proves how having a controllable, easy drive front-wheel drive car can pull you to quite a high position on the leaderboard, even if the specifications aren't there. Now, here we have a car that is not easy, yet somehow managed to get a decent lead on the Covet Rally. This is the Lancia 037 Group 4. Now, it's not a hugely powerful car, it's got 281 horsepower, which is a fairly decent amount, but it can't match a lot of the cars that compete with it on the leaderboard. And it also makes 316 Newton meters of torque, so it's actually less torquey than the old Moonhawk. And it's a slidey car, it just likes to slide. I don't think the tyre grip is here. Also, the rear tyres might be too narrow. Either way, it's not designed for a grippy kind of driving style, so it's a small wonder how I managed to even find any grip in it. It feels almost like a drift car, and I can't drift, so I just try and drive it like a track car. You'll see there I get a bit of a slide up, and that's far from ideal. You don't want to be sliding around this course. If you want to build speed, you have to grip round every corner, yet grip round every corner with very little understeer. And you'll see there's now a piece of bodywork sticking through my wheel, but the thing keeps going regardless of that. Now, it is quite fast in a straight line when you get it going. It's only got 281 horsepower, but being a supercharged engine, it puts that to good effect. Only the game thinks it's naturally aspirated because that's the way of the times. Over the bumps, it's also surprisingly good. It's a rally car, I guess we have to expect that. But the Covet felt like it had far too stiff anti-roll bars. This, it feels far more natural, but it could just be because it's a lower vehicle. It's basically a mid-engine supercar, but for some reason Lancia decided to rally it. That's the kind of logic I can get behind. There you go, I had a scary, scary slide there. And ultimately, it's just about being careful. If you are careful and respect that this vehicle is dangerous, respect that this vehicle wants to throw you off a cliff, you can achieve incredible speeds with it. My time, for example, was a 7:15.83 time, which is, surprisingly, exactly the same as an ETK KC12ZR with the automatic transmission. Two cars that really couldn't be further apart are so close, and I mean, again, I've trashed the car. It was kind of okay when it went over the finish line, and then the finish line threw my rear cover over the windscreen. Anyway, it also beat an I-Series race, and just below a Lamborghini Countach. So it's really coming with the kind of quick vehicles that aren't quite perfect. Now here we have the 80s Pessima Rally. Now we've seen the 1980s Ibishu Pessimas before. The hill climb, for example, sets the second quickest time down our hill here, and the race version was also very competitive, if not as quick as a hill climb. So it would be interesting, I thought, to see how the rally version with raised rally suspension would do. Now the grip, we have to get started on that. It's not in the same league as the race version and the hill climb. There's just nowhere near as much on-road grip, probably because they're off-road tyres. The suspension is also strange. The anti-roll bars are far stiffer than they are. It's the same problem the Covet had. They feel like they should be softer to be more absorbent when you're doing rally jumps and things, but they're very stiff actually. It's not near as much of a problem here, but it's still a problem. Now, this is a quick car though. It's not easy. I can't say it's easy because it's going to slide a lot if you try and put the power down too early without really giving it a chance, or if you try and brake too hard, since I don't believe this one has ABS turned on. The time it's set, however, is a 7:07.24, which is actually the 4th quickest vehicle on our leaderboard. It edges just ahead of the SBR4 Godzilla, which was a 1150 plus horsepower monster of a car, and just below the SBR4 twin turbo stage 2 convertible. Two very capable Japanese sports cars. It also came below both of the hill climb vehicles we've seen so far. So it's an impressive vehicle. I mean, it even beat the 7:10.9 that the race version of the car set. I don't know how that's possible. Either I've suddenly become an incredibly good driver, or just that you're able to pull more speed through this car, even if it is harder to drive. As you'll see here, I'm having the odd struggle to put the power down, but it does eventually put the power down. Perhaps a lack of rear end grip is helping it, as in it's less understeery, so it's quicker but harder to drive. Believe me, I would take the race version. It's just the same car, only much better on this kind of terrain. Here you'll see I've destroyed it over the end jump, but it's still recognisable as a Pessima, and the windows have survived, which is quite rare. Now we don't have a wing, so I just do the bumper fling. You'll see there's a few parts taken off as well, such as the door panels and the rear seats, and overall it's a functional race interior. We also have a co-driver seat. Now here we have another very fast car, only for a different reason. This is fast because it's grippy, because it can put the power down out of every corner. It's an incredibly nice thing to drive. It is the Polo WRC, if you haven't worked it out, and it's the tarmac version. There's also a tarmac stripped version with less body panels, which I may give a go sometime. It's not a powerful car. It makes 286 horsepower, merely 5 more than the 037 Group 4. It also makes 397 torques, so it's not the most powerful or the torquiest. The Pessima we had before this actually wins in both departments, but it can put the power down so well. Normally if it does slide, it's because you're really pushing it round the corner. It's on your side constantly. It's never scheming against you, it's always working with you, which is why it's set as 7 minutes, 0.51 time. I would have loved to get this under 7 minutes, but I was pushing it so hard as it was, and I didn't really think I could do any quicker than that. Perhaps I could have, but it would have ended up in too many crashed runs, and yeah, I couldn't really be bothered spending the next 10 days trying to get a better time in this. It is, however, the new 4th quickest time on our leaderboard, again between two SBR4s. The convertible's holding up well. It's honestly the nicest to drive SBR4 we had, and that's important at this level. This Golf actually feels like it needs more power. The handling is to such a level, it's never an issue. I mean, you'll see it's sliding around now, but that's just because I'm pushing the car so hard round corners, and I'm getting away with it. There's so much grip in the tyres. Even under braking, there's just so much grip available. Normally, if I'm pushing too hard and crash, this is my fault, whereas the Pessima, it felt like it could be that car's fault for crashing. And even over the bumps and things, despite being a stiff track setup, it's pretty good. And I had no problems with it. A vehicle I really like to drive overall. I just wish it had more power, honestly. Now, it is a Polo, probably because the Golf's so massive these days. And we're going to finish. Yeah. That's the other reason you don't want to crash. The windscreen becomes all dark and very hard to see out of. You'll see the engine is actually mounted quite far back for a transverse engine. And there's no radiator or anything. Again, it's an old mod, they probably didn't bother. You'll see it's quite a nicely detailed interior though, despite being an older mod. And everything works well. Here we have something that's nothing short of amazing though, in its time. It's a ETK I 3000 RSX Finale. Now I thought, hey, the description says it's a road legal rally car. It would be interesting to see how this thing does. And boy was it interesting. This version has a 3-litre engine which revs slightly higher than the standard 2.4-litre and makes 530 horsepower and 605 Nm of torque. Very impressive, not quite the same levels as the hill climb cars, but very, very powerful nonetheless. The standard 2.4 engine makes around 350 horsepower, so it's a very big climb there. And it doesn't drive too badly either. Yes, it'll struggle for grip, but these ETKs are quite nicely self-lit. For an all-wheel drive version of this, it's actually got very nice cornering balance. I remember certain other versions feeling understeer. So this was a combination between slightly less grippier road-ready tyres, as opposed to full race tyres, and the all-wheel drive system means it will slide the rear end, but not to the point it's ever really hurting the speed of the vehicle. It's still capable of incredible speed. As you'll see here, the engine's very potent with pushing it over 100 miles per hour. It sure is scary, but it's capable of these speeds if you know what you're doing. It's actually kind of stable as well. Now the time is set, I said, was amazing. It's a 6:45.8, which makes it the new second quickest car on our leaderboard. It beat a 80s Pessima hill climb car, that must be remembered. If this is beating hill climb vehicles, it must be set up well. I can only imagine how this car and this engine would be if they actually had hill climb aero and perhaps it sat a bit lower. This could have been amazingly quick. Who knows for sure, but I'd love to try that someday if someone wants to go on a hill climb version. Although it'll probably beat everything else and slightly scary with its time. I mean, this is scary enough with the speeds it goes at. So yes, maybe not what you would expect to be the second quickest vehicle on the leaderboard, but it's incredibly capable. The digital dashboard also is incredibly nice, I think. It's not to my particular taste, but it's a very nicely done feature if you're into that kind of stuff. And I didn't fling the wing. I know, that's a failing on my part. I was probably just scared of how quick I'd taken it down the hill, to be honest. As you'll see, my mouth moving nervously. Anyway, thanks for watching, and goodbye until another day.